All right, good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Call the meeting to order at
8:31.
So first we had a couple of, I think, changes to the minutes from the firefighter Harvard.
Yeah, I'd like to suggest the second paragraph under general business that begins Miss Salinger is scheduling.
Yep.
The last sentence should preferably read, the town has authorized the granting of up to 30 such exemptions.
Right, that's what we found out.
There was a contradiction noted between our notes distributed in the meeting packet and these minutes. So they haven't actually granted exemptions. They've
Was it
authorized,
9, I think?
9 have actually been approved thus
Yeah.
far.
Yeah, right. This was written before we got.
Exactly. And then the other thing that well, a couple of other things, under survey analysis, the word subsidy is in quotes. I would prefer we strike that and instead say tax reduction. The task force should also look at the amount of tax reduction going to different groups. Subsidy is not an appropriate word there.
Okay.
Under work program, final paragraph. I'd rather say instead of we'll try to develop a schedule, that we will develop a schedule. And then is the term mill rate commonly used?
I don't think it is. I mean, I didn't know what mill rate was
I didn't either.
before I got on this committee.
I would, in the middle of the next paragraph, under public comment. Sentence that begins, he also urged the task force to look at government costs, blah, blah, not just the residential property tax rate. And if we feel strongly, we could say in parentheses, also known as the quote, mill rate, quote.
I
Those are my comments. Go ahead.
had two small things. One is, and this, Ms. Quack, bottom of the survey update, last paragraph, last sentence, Ms. Quackenbush stated that she did not think MS Office tracks abandonment rate, but would check. I think that's Survey Monkey. Are we using Survey Monkey as our survey? tool?
No,
Oh,
MS.
it is MS Office.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
And they don't.
Okay, perfect. And then, we know, so never mind that one.
Mhm.
We know that some of these are our own, so then further down, second paragraph under work program. Second sentence, we know that some of these are owners that did not understand the exemption or how to apply or choose not to. The other group that I think we should highlight is, and as well as the landlords. Because right now we're saying we know that some of these people are people who didn't apply, but I would guess,
I agree.
yeah,
Yep.
landlords is,
Which paragraph is that?
second paragraph under work program.
Beginning a continuing concern.
Okay,
So second sentence, we know that some of these are owners that did not understand the exemption or how to apply or chose not to, comma, or are landlords. Is that?
Yeah, that's right.
Ellen, did you?
No, I didn't. Is that all? So I can have a motion to approve the minutes as amended?
Move to approve.
All in
Second.
second, all in favor?
Aye.
Awesome, minutes approved. So maybe, Rich, you wanna summarize in terms of chair's report, the council on aging?
Yeah, it was very interesting, I thought. Clearly some people, I mean, not a surprise. Some people did not understand how it worked. I mean, I would say a lot didn't understand how it worked. But some of them had applied and they were well aware of the benefit that they got. But there are clearly people who didn't understand. A fairly good response when asked to take the survey. I handed out several, I think you did too,
Mhm.
Ellen. So, you know, I mean, I think it was it was well worthwhile, but
Did you have 3 people or?
no,
no,
there
no,
must
no.
have been what, 50?
50 or so, it was the holiday party, so.
I know, but
They had everybody.
They had to
He
come
was a
early.
keynote speaker
Yeah.
for the holiday party.
Yeah,
It was a food and a harpist, so what do you want?
Yeah,
Holiday
right.
music and food, so it was a perfect combination.
It's,
Food, a harpist and a spiel from Carlton Willard, so.
Oh, yes, it was very funny. And that, but yeah, there were a lot of people who we went around each table
Oh,
and
okay.
just sat and talked to people and asked them, do you know about it? Do you need to know more information? And one woman who didn't know, I wondered if she'd actually applied, but didn't know she applied. There's a lot of that. What is it?
Mm,
Mhm.
And how do I do this? And is it gonna help me? And kind of shocked when I said, yes, you'll get X back if you know roughly what your house would sell for. So there was just, we knew this. It's just a really low awareness.
And a lot of people didn't know whether some thought they had to reapply to.
Yes,
Yeah.
and also, that's
Yeah.
just a lot. So there was a lot of kind of recognition that the process wasn't well advertised. And, I don't know who was saying this, that the process was launched before the bridge was really launched. And so an obvious place to have, publicized it and explained it was probably not available. So,
I'm not sure that's true.
some way of saying.
It was, Wendy, correct me if I'm wrong, it was approved in 2023
Mhm.
and the bridge started, I think, in 2024.
No, it's been around for more.
Yeah, it has been around, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Okay,
Well, in any case, it.
strike that anyhow.
One of the results that we have, so maybe step back, in terms of Concord Green, we lost that opportunity, and couldn't kind of pull together, and
Oh,
so
that's too bad.
the offer was, we can do it in January, and I said, I'm sorry, we're closing the survey before that.
Yeah.
So a lot of interest, but I think that it's holiday time, getting people's attention is difficult. And at least from the survey responses so far, it's like 880 and still only 38 renters,
Mhm.
sadly.
But
well,
I-
it only includes the ones that have been done online. Do we have any sense of?
I entered all mine
Oh, you did?
Yeah,
Already been
yeah, there were a
entered in?
handful, there haven't been, I mean,
Just haven't been many renters.
no, I have been, I think I've gotten a total probably like 25 surveys that I've
Filled out by hand?
filled out, yeah. I think a lot of people are taking them home and they're not making them back.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So anyways, but
We'll
I,
do one
there's
more
the,
check tomorrow.
yeah, there's the Concord, to that point, I think my, letter to the editor should come out today
Yeah,
in the Concord Bridge.
tomorrow.
And so, given that, I would suggest that we might wanna push back the survey close date a few days.
maybe
Not have
pull
it
it
be the
back to the
19th.
end. Yeah, it's tomorrow right
It's
now.
tomorrow,
Yeah.
and your letter only shows up tomorrow.
Yeah, so I think we should push it a week. And we,
Okay.
and
I
we
mean-
need the renters, we need to, if that allows us to try to get renters.
We can certainly just tell Kristen to keep it open until the end of the year, keep it
Yeah.
open, because it's not like we're gonna do anything
And
with the analysis before January 1st.
yeah, maybe she can just say, remove the close date or change it to the years.
Okay.
So people know, they don't go to the website and like, oh, close, never mind,
Yeah, yeah.
you know?
I think the who's responding is also indicative of this thing that keeps coming up. That people don't, there's this lack of knowledge of the RTE and that you can even apply for it, and then there's the burden of applying. Which are two things that can make it ineffective in
Yeah.
itself.
Yeah.
So I wonder, is this the best way to help people who are having a hard time with something? To have an added layer, just in thinking about how the application process goes.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I did look at some results from the surveys so far, and
As have I, yeah.
Yeah.
17%, so just think about this, didn't apply, homeowners, some which is about homeowners. So that's a significant number, and when asked why, it was 50% was, I don't think it applies to me, and it could because they're
Or
renting.
they could have just bought, if they bought. and
They
then
just-
getting that,
Some
That
people
was-
said
they
they
just
were
bought.
reason, yeah.
Or I didn't know how to apply.
that's,
So there's there's just a lack of, does it apply to me, how do I?
Or there was someone with a higher valued home who said, well, I wouldn't have had any benefit.
Yeah.
Which actually isn't true.
well, everyone gets benefit, yeah.
Everyone gets a benefit,
Yeah.
it's just some people still pay more in taxes. I know that's a
Yeah.
weird concept,
Yeah.
but
You all get a benefit, but it doesn't mean your taxes go down.
You just get it,
they go up by less.
They go up by less.
you get a worse negative.
But I agree with you, all of that has made it very complicated and suggests that if the town sticks with it, an outreach program
Yes.
is needed too.
You
Do
almost
better
need,
public
Right, or
education.
on the flip side, is there a way to help those same population of people that need the
Yes.
help without an application process? Is there some other form of,
The problem is, to
Deferral.
confirm eligibility, you always need some kind of demonstration of where you
Fit.
fall with
Yeah.
regard to income or assets or home value or residency. You know, there are rules around who can qualify, and even if we come up with something more restrictive, you would still have to be able to prove
right?
that
But are
you
there
meet
people
those
that are
rules.
demonstrating that through something else that also could be added to? I don't know.
We can think of
Yeah,
that, yeah.
we're just thinking outside the box of sort of going back to why we keep saying this, that
I know.
people didn't know about it, people are, didn't apply for it because they didn't think they qualified, and those two things coming up a lot sort of suggests this isn't effective, which is our goal, to figure out, is this effective?
So I mean, it's an interesting
Yeah.
question. How do you reach the residents of town, right? We know that not everyone comes to town meeting, to put it mildly. The bridge is distributed to every household. So a more concerted public relations campaign through the paper is one way. Another kind of mailing to homes, assuming people then read what comes in the mail. Anyway, we should think
Yeah,
about it, right? What's the best
but
way
if
to
there were
reach?
an easy way, I mean, you do need to show that it's your primary residence, and that's the only reason for income tax. And I think that might be even then confusing to people. I think, given my income tax is a barrier, I think, psychologically.
Hmm.
So maybe there needs to be a lot of workshops. Come in, we'll help you fill it out.
Nobody goes to workshops.
Well, then I'm out of ideas.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
we'll have to sort of,
But-
the final report, we can sort of kind of communications plan with. the
There
final
is a
report.
community, yes.
But it's gonna be a rinse, wash, repeat,
Mhm.
definitely. I think part of it's just gonna be a lot, like every week in the bridge type
Yeah.
thing.
I think the problem is with more targeted, in other words, the obvious alternative for the elders would be to really relax the asset requirement
Mm,
on needs.
On the
based.
senior means tested.
But then everybody's gonna need to submit their tax returns.
Right.
Because you gotta prove that you're within the
Right.
circuit breaker income.
Right.
And, I don't know how you prove, whether you can just sign an affidavit that your, assets are less than X or not.
Well, you wouldn't, if they had the 41.5, you don't have that.
If you'd had
That
41
would
C and a
be
half,
excellent, because that's proving assets, I think, is
but
a
that,
barrier.
that doesn't, 41 C and a half. Well, 41 C and a half
Removes the asset limit.
removes the asset.
Yeah.
They still have to,
You still have to show you still
they
have,
have to show it.
Income and home value.
so all this stuff is, yes, home value,
Well, anything you do is gonna be at least as complicated, if not more complicated, I think is what.
Mhm.
Which doesn't mean it isn't worth doing.
Right.
You know.
And if the benefit is real, to people who are experiencing hardship,
Yeah.
then it may be worth those steps to get the benefit.
okay,
All right,
all right, so survey,
I do
Can I-
think, by the way, one thing to this education part, and you guys are gonna hate me for saying this again, but 38 responses from renters certainly show that this suggests that this is a group that isn't as engaged in town. And, that coupled with the lack of understanding of the RTE, I think is what's happening, as we've talked about, is that our renter community is getting squeezed heavily, I think, by the 2.9 million. So effectively, with 50% of those renters being housing cost constrained, I think this is looking increasingly like a regressive tax. So getting to that $2.9 million is critical for us to understand
Right.
and unpacking that.
Yeah.
So I mean, the 38 responses, again, it's like, and I was chatting with Alan about this more broadly, it's a broader issue for Concord, which is how do we engage the renter community, which represents a bigger portion of the community that we're trying to help. And if we think about the affordable housing side of things, a even bigger portion of who we should be trying to help there. And when I reached out to the group, understandably, not surprisingly, there isn't someone who's got responsible for engaging with renters.
is that automatic? I
What?
don't necessarily equate renters with the affordable housing.
No, I'm saying, but there's no one who's engaged with saying, how do I go after a portion of the population that's not engaging with us right now that we want to try to help?
And to be fair, the law never intended for renters to be included.
The
right?
RTE.
The RTE.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, but the effect of it is such that
Yes.
it's impacting them, I believe.
The other thing I think we need to be careful of is the fact that I think, Wendy, maybe you know, that the affordable units, and those are people who are probably right at the 30% or housing constrained. I think the landlord's taxes are reduced, that the assessed value takes into account the fact that some of those apartments can't be rented for more than X.
Mhm.
And we need to understand, before we automatically assume this is regressive for renters, I think we need to think that through.
Yeah, I definitely agree. We don't want to automatically assume it. What percentage do you think of apartments in Concord could potentially qualify for that, Rich?
Well, I've got a slide keeper that has a slide that has the number of affordable units, most of which are rentals, but I'm gonna say it's on the order of 400, 300 or 400.
Wow,
Okay,
But that includes, the housing authority,
right.
the rental, the affordable units of the existing 40B and some others.
so is that about 15% roughly of rental units in Concord then? It's 300 to 400 and they're,
But something like 1,800 rental units, the production plan has something like that. Rental housing
yeah,
units.
I'm just trying to think about, anyways, yeah, I agree.
Okay.
I guess a broader point out,
Okay.
we're gonna have to kill part the 2.9 million.
Yeah, I think
And
that's.
my point was more broadly about renters' engagement in the town and how we make sure we
I
capture.
mean, I have friends who are renting and literally beg them to please help me figure this out. I got zero response, even from people that I work with in other committees, just like, huh? Kind of a no reaction.
They don't realize what's happening.
Yeah, so I think it's kind of like you were saying, but you were saying more broadly about is there a voice for renters? And so that's kind of, that also could be part of the observations from. our
About
report.
fairness.
Yeah,
in
that
town.
if they, have, and again, if somebody doesn't want to engage, you can't make them engage, but.
No,
there-
true.
There is a communication
But we,
problem.
yeah, and just making sure we're keeping them in mind.
And I think I remember from the housing productions, renters tend to be under 40 or over 70.
They're actually, if you look at the type of people that we're trying to recruit from a broader DEI perspective,
What do you mean
they-
by recruit?
I'm not saying recruit, I'm thinking
Yeah.
about bringing companies. With people of the
That we're
people,
trying to
Yeah,
target.
economic
they are disproportionately renters,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And so it's, yeah, we may be trying to swim upstream.
Okay, because part of our charge was about promoting economic diversity in town.
Yeah, yeah.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
And it's easier to come in as a renter in town.
Exactly.
The rents are so
If you can
high.
afford
but-
the rent,
Yeah,
yeah.
well, it's high, but it's very different than being able to afford a down payment,
Right.
Yeah.
qualify for a mortgage. So, renter is the first, maybe is the way you try to go.
Just a
Okay.
comment under public communications before we jump to the work program.
Mhm.
I attended the chairs breakfast yesterday
Okay.
morning, and the woman from the Hugh Cargill Trust said that 8 to 10 individuals have been assisted by the Hugh Cargill Trust for financial hardship.
Okay.
And I thought that number
That's
was,
a regular, and that's a regular monthly average,
okay,
and that's
not the
separate
tax.
from the tax.
Got
relief.
it,
There
got
were 4 last month that got tax relief.
Okay.
2 were from a prior month, or 2 were current.
okay.
So these numbers are monthly, so I should think about them in aggregate, like multiplying by
Okay,
12.
we get the aggregate number, we can get the aggregate
Mm-hmm.
numbers, but that's sort of, the Hugh Cargill Trust was average, but that could be everything from helping with roof repair.
Yeah,
Medical bill to something.
I take it as an
But
order of
I
magnitude.
mention that number because it's actually surprisingly low to
Yeah,
me.
I agree.
And, if our concern is helping people who are truly in hardship,
Mhm.
we may not be talking about
Well, remember that.
90% of homeowners.
Yeah, Bonnie, who's the under 65
She's
social
the
worker, and then
executive.
Nicole, they help facilitate across agencies
Uh-huh.
needs.
Yes.
So sometimes it's, Hugh Cargill Trust maybe do 10%, but sometimes it's directing them to other agencies where
Yeah.
they can get more funding with. And remember, Hugh Cargill Trust has a limit on,
Yeah.
it's 2,000 per person this year, so.
Okay, all right. Anyway,
Yeah.
just great. Observation.
Okay, so I think we've done the survey with 880 responses, low on renters, but I will ask Kristen, keep it open to the end of the year
Yeah,
so that
update the
your
website.
your letter will, perhaps, have some readership impact. That would be good.
Hopefully.
I would suggest that we need to analyze those 2 pools of
Yes.
data differently,
Mhm.
right? We can't,
Agreed.
I mean, maybe in terms of response, in terms of ages or incomes, we can
Mhm.
have the whole 880. But after that, we probably need to.
I mean,
pull-
it's 4% and the same renters are
Yeah.
25%, so it's not representative. And so I think we agree, but analyze homeowners from the survey and renters, we have to step back
We'll
probably.
have to figure out what we
And
do
use
once we get all the
other-
data.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it's, all of this is gonna be data from everywhere.
It's gonna be pulling stuff together and painting a picture that isn't as simple as survey results and census and so on.
And John, you're gonna go around one last time, I guess, to the library
Yeah.
and COA and.
I was there.
house.
I was there yesterday to drop off more renter surveys. I had rebalanced the homeowner surveys because the library run out, COA had lots, so.
Oh, I see, okay.
But
Can I just suggest that you extend your deadline till the 31st and then have a news and notice sent out?
So we're sending the
Oh.
deadline till the 31st, agreed, but
I'm just saying, yeah,
and
because
now put a news and notice out as well.
Okay.
What does that mean to put out a
it
news?
just means there's an email blast that goes out to people who are generally paying attention to town.
Okay, okay.
news.
That's good.
The transportation survey extended their
Right,
survey.
they
They
did.
did not do, I don't know if they did a news and notice, but I think you should put a news and
Okay.
notice.
all
And
right.
is that Donna?
Done.
Yeah, well, through Kristen, whatever, yeah.
Okay.
Gretchen.
So Ellen, you'll let. me
I will
know.
do that.
Thank you.
All right, so that's. Do you want to talk about the annual report draft or?
Yeah, you saw both the charge or the request from Donna, as well as the draft that, I had put together a while ago, which is basically a rewording of the charge.
Mhm.
And it may be longer than what they wanted, but, this is what I first pulled together. Comments, suggestions?
No, I think other than we can put in the actual number for, for the end of the year that we get for surveys, other than that, I think that it's.
This plus
Yeah,
the photo will.
Yeah,
say
there
that.
isn't a whole lot we can report out if we
Yeah.
want to decide, we're doing analysis, which isn't.
All right,
Then
then.
find out. Excellent, thank you so much for doing that.
Mhm.
Okay, again, do you want to talk about, the Harwich meeting?
Yeah, we had a really interesting conversation with the assessor, Carleen Jones. She was more than happy to talk to us. We were not the first town to approach them. However, they are, to their knowledge and to ours, they are the first town to adopt section 5, capital O. That provides cities and towns with the possibility of affording exemptions to property owners who rent to eligible renters with year-round leases. Am I saying that correctly?
Mm.
Yeah, and so the way they've chosen to do it, because the law allows each community to set their own rules about this, they have capped the number of permissible exemptions at 30. She told us many anecdotes about firefighters and teachers or elderly parents or children who rent from the homeowner, either a room or a floor or a wing. They're hoping to provide affordable housing opportunities, especially for their public employees, but then also for family or anyone else. However, there are documentation requirements. You have to submit a copy of the lease. And the renter has to submit a copy of their tax return. They have to meet what's 125% of the area median income or below. They have to meet that guideline, and they can submit that directly to the assessor. So the landlord doesn't necessarily have to see that information. But to date, they've approved 9 exemptions. And she said the paperwork has not been an issue. People are happy to do it. They're trying to get the word out to get more interest in the program. They're working with the Hyannis-based housing, I forget what it was called, Housing Assistance Corp, to get ADUs constructed on properties, which would then, if they're rented out at affordable rates, would also be eligible for the exemption. And so the increase in property tax would be offset by the exemption that they would get for the ADU. Anyway, it seemed, I think our impression was that Carleen said it was easy to implement thus far.
Was there a reason they capped it at 30?
Because it has to be funded out of their overlay account and they didn't
Okay.
want to stress their overlay.
And how much is the benefit?
It's 1,000, it depends on the square footage of the rental. And it's $1,000 off for under 500 square feet and 1,500 for
okay.
above.
And it turns out, I just went to a seminar yesterday. They're not actually the only town.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Oh,
Egremont
okay.
out in the Berkshires just started it the
Okay.
middle of this year.
Okay.
Where?
Egremont in the Berkshires,
Egremont.
for essentially the same reason that they did. That they had lost their workforce housing to Airbnbs.
Yeah.
And they
Oh.
were desperate to encourage people to do full-time rentals to people who worked in the area. And they, I've got the number, at home, but, you know, I think they've done 6 so far, but there's only 900 homes in town.
Yeah.
So, and they're hopeful of doing more, and they did the same thing.
Okay,
They put a cap on it,
okay.
but they
Okay.
said, you know, we might raise the cap. So far, I think they figured that it only cost the town about $9,800 for the ones they'd approved.
Mhm.
And they have set a ceiling of 200% of AMI, but their problem is they're not in an Eastern Mass AMI, so they said, we had to go higher because our AMI is so low.
Yeah,
So they're,
and 200 is the cap according to the law.
right, and they went all the way to the
Yeah.
cap.
Interesting.
Can I ask a question?
Please.
So you just said it's funded out of the overlay, so that's different, like the RTE it's a redistribution of the taxes. Is that part of the law that you can't redistribute that, or is that just the town choice that they chose to fund it out of the overlay versus redistribute
That's an
it?
interesting question. I did just look at the law again, because I'm summarizing it in my draft section for the report, and I don't remember seeing mention of the overlay. So that might be their choice.
Our overlay will kick in if the estimate of users is off. So if we
Oh.
underestimated the number of users.
You're talking about-
But I'm talking about Concord. So
About,
when you do.
about the
RTE
5.0 or about,
No, I'm talking about our program, and this just relates it. So every year there's gonna be an assessment about the overlay, right? So
Mhm.
ours is, the size of it considers the risk of RTE changing, much like under this program. You could probably, I don't know if it allows you to fund it within your tax base. But they've chosen to fully fund the whole thing in the overlay. I don't know if that's a requirement of the law.
yeah, I don't think
I
it
don't-
is, but I need to clarify
It's a
that, Kathy.
decision by the town.
Good question.
Because if that gets bigger, that becomes,
Yes.
you know, a
Mhm.
finance committee, you know, kind of question, because we'll be using extra money, like versus getting it from, it's not gonna be a net zero.
At the levels that people have taken it up on, neither Harwich nor Egremont seem to be too concerned
Mhm.
about, you know.
Do you know how much their exemption is in Egremont?
I think it's a proportional thing. It's not a flat amount
Interesting.
like Harwich. And all I can say is they used the number for the 6 I think it's 6 they've approved. It winds up being about $1,500.
Yeah.
I will say, in these towns with active tourism markets and therefore a lively demand for Airbnb rentals, I'm not sure $1,000 would sway me from keeping my space out of Airbnb.
Well, you know, I mean, it's at the obviously at the margin, but, you know, it's one more reason not to do Airbnb over and above the hassle and, you know, your neighbors being annoyed and all that sort of thing. But you're right, it probably doesn't offset the advantage.
The revenue that you could get if you're renting through Airbnb.
But it may also, I think, keep people from selling that unit to somebody who would turn it into an Airbnb. In other words, that, you know, okay, I can, you know, if you cut my taxes $1,500, I could carry it and I wanna hold on to it. Because obviously what's happening is these things are going on the market and they're getting snapped up as Airbnbs.
Right.
But
Interesting.
it was a very interesting session and there were about 100 people in the seminar. And a lot of people were asking questions, so we're not the only ones that are thinking about it.
And Carlene said that she had calls from other towns. Rich encouraged her to go on the speaker circuit
Oh, yeah.
to the Mass Municipal Association at least, and talk about their experience, but now we know there are 2. All right, so interesting insights. I guess the other thing that I finally understood. In previous discussions in this committee, we kept saying, well, how do you guarantee that the renter benefits from the tax relief? And in fact, it's the property owner who benefits, but you've already affirmed that the renter is locked into an affordable lease.
Yeah.
So that's the condition in order for the property owner to also be incentivized. Okay.
Okay, so move on then to the assessor's request to the legislators, and I will see if I can screen share. Okay, there we go. So, I will just walk through this. People can hopefully see it in the screen in terms of sections and just welcome people to chime in, push back whatever, is appropriate. So I think the first topic that we wanted to understand was just to confirm with Meredith and her team, the reasons why a residential parcel would not be able to qualify for the, RTE. So
Yeah.
so those are all the ones that kind of I had seen, just sort of asking her, we're missing something and just have a discussion about them.
Mhm.
And to whatever degree is possible, does she know the number and the assessed value? For example, we do know that in the classification hearing, it was stated that there were 267 vacant land parcels in town, 27 apartment complexes. Would love to just have the total assessment for each of those. So simple stuff. Hopefully it's not hard, but just to confirm that we actually do have all the specifics right about the RTE qualification.
And presumably they have numbers for each of those
They
categories.
should be able to, because it's all, it's bottom up built.
They might not know, complex corporate ownership. We might get some pushback. They might say, well, until somebody applies and we investigate, we don't know. But for anyone that is clearly a use code, you know, they should know, and just want to kind of peel away. Like you said, try to understand of the people who were paying, but in other words, they can't qualify. How many what are the number of parcels and what is their assessed value? From that, we can figure out the tax.
Mhm.
Question on that?
Go.
Is there a reason why we're just not asking for the number and the range of values who just did not apply? Or are you just gonna deduce the number from?
Well, I think one of the things we're gonna try to do, Kathy, is just get the database, individual line items in Excel, so we can look at the data. I think at the end of the day, this is gonna be like, I'm anticipating going through about 2,000 lines and trying to figure out who they are, particularly the big ones. So then with that, we'll then be able to look at ranges and everything.
So a little bit later, the last table on this, I did include, I think what you're asking, Kathy, is for those that did not qualify, in particularly residential homes. What was the number and what was the tax impact by range, by assessment range? And let me just.
Yeah,
go
I mean,
through-
I think we're talking about did not qualify. I'm just talking about those that didn't even apply. Like, so it's
Yeah,
not that they didn't qualify, they just didn't even apply.
Well,
We don't, that's gonna fall into the same bucket of people not that $2.9 million that would, the assess that
Right.
Meredith shared. Would have included people who qualified but just did not apply. So
Right,
we want to peel that overall 2.9 million apart. Part of it will include people who qualified but did not apply. We may not know that. I'm not sure we'll be able to tell who those people are, but those people will be in here.
we will pull away whatever we can
Mhm.
that the assessors can, and they're gonna be very specific about this, so if they can prove it and they are confident in the numbers, they'll give it to us. If not, they might tell us how they would know and why they wouldn't know, but
Yeah.
I'm expecting it to be a conversation.
If we get the, I mean, it's the report, the property cards, the data from that in an Excel spreadsheet.
Okay, so that's number 3. So one of the things that people might not know, this is number 3, the property cards. Each of the property cards lists the parcel address and then lists who's the owner and their address.
Mhm.
So for example, next to me, it'll say, the parcel is such and such Westvale and the owner is CC King who lives on Heathbridge Road. So clearly it's, not her primary residence. And the question is, is it a rental? So I would love to get a list if they can. I'm assuming the property cards are online. That's number 1. That's my first
Yeah.
assumption.
They are,
Okay.
yeah.
But that there's an Excel spread database behind it. And that we can ask for a list of those parcels of which the property address is different, or the owner's address is different than the property's address.
Do we infer from that?
I think a lot of those are also because they're in a trust with an
Yeah.
attorney's office,
Yeah.
so I think you have to be careful about
Yeah.
assuming that.
No, so in other words, we get all that, and then we'll have to pull out, because I did a quick scan, and a lot of them were just that.
Yeah.
There was some trust in Boston.
Yeah.
Or, some, what looked like a property owner, group in Sudbury or
Well,
Acton.
But then
people
you
put their
can't say
properties in
anything, right?
LLCs and different,
Yeah.
with the
But
formats.
they could still live in that home as their
Right.
primary residence.
Exactly.
Yeah.
My next door neighbor is that.
Um,
She's got, so it's, what we can do with this, I'm not quite sure, but if we get the data, maybe we can look at it and make some sort of assumption.
I wouldn't count on all of that being in an Excel database. I mean, the property cards are pretty clearly just scanned data. They're not, it's not a database that's shown when you click on the property card for assessors.
I mean, they do have a database
I
by,
mean, I'm
parcel.
assuming you can get the address, the billing address.
Yeah, exactly. I agree. The only thing, my ask, Ellen, would be that we ask for the owner's address and the property address, but we, as part of the request, but we don't only ask for those ones where they're different, right? I want to know where they're the same too, because that'll tell me, oh, that's maybe someone who qualified but didn't apply. It's someone who, complex legal structure, whatever it may be. I guess if she's gonna give us 1,000 lines, I'd rather have the 2,000 lines and be able to see the 1,000 lines within it, so that, just to get more
Well,
information.
there'd be 6,000.
No, I just wanna get the non-qualifying.
It's easier to probably get the whole thing.
Maybe
Yeah.
get the whole thing, so they, we
No, I
got
wanna
that,
get- So just remove the owner's address is different from the property address,
okay,
cause I just want the full 2,000 lines.
got it. So there'd be the property address, the owner's address, and I'm assuming I should say name,
Yeah,
so you know if it's an LLC or a person.
yeah.
And then, and I think I'm hoping that this is okay, because you can actually go through and, if you're really in type A, and look at each property card, and I've tried it, and it's a pain in the neck. So I'm hoping that she will say, sure, here, go at it. And
so I don't know if it's related to this, but after the Harwich conversation, I started thinking about how could we tease out the number of potential rental units in private homes? I'm not talking about in large apartment complexes. I'm talking about somebody who's renting out that second home, or somebody who's renting out a room.
Yeah.
The assessor doesn't know that, right?
I don't think they ever would, because for example, I have a room in my basement, which quote unquote, I could rent it to my daughter. So it wouldn't look any different. It would say 2 or 3 bedrooms.
Yeah.
And the fact that I rented, unless you did have an ADU, and I don't know how those might be identified, but there are
That's
certainly
another
ADUs,
interesting
you
question.
know,
are
ADUs, and I think they're called multiple units in the same parcel, or so. I don't know if I'm making it too complicated.
So on a tax card, it would show if there was a separate dwelling. It doesn't
Mhm.
necessarily define it as rentable unit.
And
So,
of course, not all rentable units are separate
right,
buildings, right?
right,
It could just be a
right.
room in the
so it
house.
doesn't,
There's no way the assessor's gonna know that.
there's not, yeah.
So I thought,
Do you need
isn't
a
that true?
permit?
Yeah, that's what I thought. I thought if a single family home decided that they wanted to, as an example, and maybe it's just if you do an addition. But do an addition so you can rent something out. I thought you had to get approval for that, but maybe I'm wrong. I
No,
can't
not if it's a room.
remember. Yeah, no.
Wait, well, you got 2 different things.
Yeah.
To build an ADU or divide your house up into an ADU.
Yeah,
You need a building permit.
yeah.
Yes.
You can get it as of right now because of the state law, but you still need the building permit. What I think is the case is if you want to essentially rent a room in your house, you need a license to do that.
I thought,
In other words, I know you need a license to quote, run a tourist home, because I've been chasing people who. And it's a long story, I won't bother. But I know you need a license to run a tourist home. And I think you need a license even if you rent a room on a long-term basis.
And that would be from what department, I wonder?
Health, I think.
Yeah,
Oh,
there's a
the way-
legal rental versus, if people probably
Got
do this
Yeah.
under the radar, but
Oh,
there
yeah.
are, having when we go to sell a property. We have to be very careful about talking about whether there's a legal rental there or not. It's often there's a space with a little kitchenette in the basement and it appears as though somebody's had their in-laws living there and they threw their old kitchen down in the basement, you know, and it was sort of done with, you know, building permits, but not to necessarily rent it out. They don't have a legal apartment,
Right.
but they have a space that would be great for guests or something, and people see that as possible way to rent, but that wouldn't be legally renting. I don't know if, you know, we must have a catalog of legal rentals.
I would think so. That's what I was saying. That's, yeah, we should.
But I would think, as I say, I think it's the health, why, is it health or buildings? I don't know, but
All right, so
somebody's got
yeah,
that.
you or I maybe could look a little deeper on
So
that.
maybe the
Stop
health,
over there.
I know, exactly.
Right.
And the reason I asked the question is, of course, if we're interested in section 5.0, it would be interesting to know what the potential demand for that would
Right.
be.
If we had the list of renters and the list of properties in Concord and their addresses that were approved for renters, that would address the 2.9 million.
wait a minute, but how do we know proof for renters?
That's what we're saying, the housing.
Being able,
housing more
if we,
planning.
if we have the ability to identify houses that have a legal rental or
Okay.
houses that have a rentable space.
Then you
And it
have
may
overlay each of
require
those.
merging two databases.
That's right.
So they may have a list at the Board of Health, and we would add
That's a
it
good
to the
idea.
assessor list.
There you go, and then you
Okay.
can peel apart the 2.9.
Well, I'm
So-
not sure how that,
Because if we know, if I have the address for every unit that is registered as a rental unit, I can look at the assessor's database. I can look at the tax impact of the RTE on each of those properties and figure out which of those are rental units and just see, all right, what's the impact on landlords of the RTE?
maybe.
Okay, all right.
That's at the
Are
property
you
level.
willing, so you're saying you could go to the health department plan? Excellent, thank you. Okay, that would be a good addition. We're gonna be crossing many databases here, I think. Okay, so the main request is,
And
This-
then I guess the only other comment is you would find out if that's publicly available legally, if you
Right.
could get that information.
Right.
Mm,
This may not be public.
Yeah.
Don't know. You think it would be, but
mhm,
but I think one of the key questions is where are the rentals?
mhm.
You know, because we can identify the apartments, but it's the renting a house or renting an ADU. Those
Yeah,
are
what's
the
the
apartments.
term? I was thinking of them as private rentals, but that may not be the right term.
Well, I mean, for some, it's an entire separate building on a property, like a little cottage that's been there and has
Carriage house,
a
that's.
carriage house, something like that, or a room over the garage that is, and so in some cases, it's a separate dwelling, which gets assessed as a, you know, another line item on the town card, you know, you
Oh,
would
so
have,
it would be
Or
a
is it
line
just
item.
additional square
It-
footage on the same
each
property?
dwelling is assessed at
Oh.
different.
Interesting.
So maybe there's something to query
Property.
when we do the property cards, if there's a separate,
We might see it there.
separate dwelling.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
again, that's a subset of all possible legal rentals.
Yes.
Yes,
Right.
because some
Yeah.
can be embedded in the main dwelling of the house. You could have, you know, an apartment within a house. Within dwelling number one, the only existing dwelling, so.
I would, yeah.
Yeah, depends. I mean, each one's gonna be unique to the situation, so.
I think as we think about this overall question, there's all like. Focusing on the big chunks, we're not gonna be able to identify every little
No.
piece, right? So materiality is gonna become.
But if we were going to think about implementing section 5.0,
Mm,
going to the Prescott is not the way I would do it, right? It
Presumably,
would-
yeah.
It would be through private legal rentals, I would think. But that's just because I'm now mimicking what Harwich has done in my mind.
And
Anyway.
because the Prescott may be getting the benefit on their taxes of,
Do they have affordable units?
oh yeah, they're required to have, I think it's 25% or something.
Oh, okay, all right.
So, and those all have to be below 80% of AMI.
So those.
And
are-
you're saying their assessment is likely reduced as a result of that?
I think so. I mean, one of the things that's clear is that the per apartment assessment of any of the big rental complexes is way below the small condominium.
So I know Rich had asked you, Ellen, whether you're going to ask that of the assessor. Can we double check that when we're
I
talking?
just sent something to Meredith tonight. CC'd you, Rich, to have to confirm both apartments and then also individual, like the Habitat for Humanity that was permanently restricted, so you'll get an answer.
Okay, thanks very much.
Okay,
I'll
thank you.
send that to you.
All right, in terms of the question of assessment, so here's a table and I changed a little bit the ranges to align with two things. One, what we included in the survey and to put the current break even point in. So first, she will have this because she'll know the number of parcels that were RTE qualifying. I'm talking about here, kind of 1-2 family homes and condos versus those that didn't qualify. And then the total differential tax, or if she finds it easier, just the assessment. But that's the 2.9 million. You can see in the bottom of this sheet, the second column, 2.9 million. That's the cost to people to set to homes and apartment complexes, vacant land, and other things that we can identify of who's paying more to fund the 2.9 million. That is the benefit of the cruise to the RTE qualifying homes. So that's the main ask.
This is the crux. yeah.
That's the crust of the ads. And the request is for her and her team to do it so that we don't get into tying ourselves into knots in terms of trying to figure out what use codes to use and just to be sure we've got that piece nailed down. Then we can begin to tease out some of these other things in terms of for the non-qualifying homes by assessment range. That's where we can begin to say, okay, do any of these have legal apartments, et cetera?
Or, yeah, what portion of these non-qualifying folks are landowners versus
Yes.
vacant versus, whatever.
Yeah, so that's what the request is to the assessor. I've already sent that to her. And we're meeting on Monday, the 22nd to discuss, and I'm excited about it. I think it's gonna be, Meredith's been really, really cooperative, so I think it'll be a good conversation, a good meeting.
This is not related. It's a question I would like to ask of the assessor, but it's not related to the data work we've asked thus far. I'd like to get a complete tally of the number of beneficiaries in Concord under each tax relief program. For veterans, for the sight impaired, for the elderly. We've had bits and pieces of numbers reported to us, but I can envision a table in the
Okay.
report where, for each of the tax relief programs, we know how many in the last complete fiscal year.
And is it right that she will know the assessor's office
She'll
is
know
the one?
everything except for Hugh Cargill Trust. She
Okay,
knows
got it.
Thank you.
Cargill, you'll have to go to. You could ask Shannon, who can get it for you.
Okay, John.
Shannon McAndrew.
Yeah,
All right, so that'll be a complete list of who is currently benefiting, because one of the questions is it could be a portfolio of benefits that people are getting.
Well, that's true. So we'll get a
There'll be an
number.
overlap, but.
There may be overlap.
actually, you should ask Meredith about it because she looks for OLAPs and
Oh, okay,
they're not necessarily allowed.
okay.
Well, there's a ceiling for
Some
how
you
much
can, yeah,
relief
right,
you can
but
get.
one usually eliminates eligibility from another, so.
Yeah.
Nicole was talking about that at Council on Aging, that you can get kicked out of circuit breaker if you're getting benefits from other programs. In some cases, they advise not getting benefits from other programs because the circuit breaker is the
Is
biggest
better.
dollar.
Yeah.
So it's complicated, and I'm sure she's had those conversations, and I will ask.
Great.
Hey, that is it for the assessor's request, meet for the meeting on December 22nd.
Can I interrupt for 1 second? Sorry.
Please do.
Ellen, we actually they sent us, if I remember our meeting back in May. We got some data from them after that meeting, but we have a list of the owner's name, the parcel number, property location, the value, and then the mailing address.
Oh,
They
perfect.
sent
do?
us from back in May, yeah. And
Oh,
it's only lists, I think, if the mailing address is different than the home address, because it's only a couple hundred lines and the mailing addresses are all not Concord. And it's broken down by mixed use, single family, and condominiums. So I can send this.
Please
I mean,
do.
maybe it's changed and been updated since May, I guess, but it is also listed by 2-family homes and single family homes with waterfront property. I don't know why that's a separate thing, but
Well, I bet you that's, yeah, interesting.
I can send this to whoever needs this. If she says I already gave you this, we got this in May.
Kathy, could you send it to me as well?
Yep,
Send it to the group.
send it to the group. Yep.
And then, again, I'd ask for an update, but thank you, I forgot.
Good time. Good to be.
Okay, so in terms of preparing for our report, maybe, I don't have quite good.
Could I ask one other question, Alan? We sort of put on hold the idea of trying to do the larger, the Puma area survey of, you know, where are the people that are housing cost constrained? And, you know, now that the government is maybe open for a while, who knows? I wish I could do it myself. I don't have those skills. You had at one point said you might be able to do it, but you're taking on a lot here. I don't know whether, John, whether.
Let me go back and look at it, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's worth doing, and I think if you can get the data, if you can get that Puma data set, I think it's.
Is that
Just, it will, that data will complement the survey.
That would be
Yeah, right.
excellent.
It'll be,
because-
it'll just confirm or whatever. Yeah, so I'll look to see what we can do.
And I
Yeah.
think it's.
Oh, and you know, the other, so I think, Sean, the other thing I think we should do is to, Kathy, remember if we look at the census, to look at the census and see what date, what the latest is from that, because that gives, just a confirmation of age of folks in town. It also gives a list of renters. Because it does say it will give their address as a unit within an apartment complex, so that's another kind of check on total number of rental units in town.
Mhm.
And where would you find census data results?
Clerk's office, town clerk,
Oh, interesting.
I can ask
So
her.
we can get each individual person and if they're a renter or not and their
It'll,
address.
their address will be will be a specific unit within, like, you know, a Concord Commons unit, 500.
But we wouldn't know if they were renting or not.
I'm not
But
sure.
would you know whether they're a renter or a condominium owner?
Yeah, that's what this is.
I mean, if you get,
No, it
Yeah,
just-
we did this before. I have the list. I mapped the census data to the assessors data, if we remember back like last spring. And yeah, I think we stopped because we don't know anything about it. So we can show, yes, who lives where, but we don't know if they own it. So we do have that data. It's in a big spreadsheet. We have the census data and all the assessment data. And I
I
did
think
start
one
to
of-
map them.
Kathy, one of the things that I was just jotting down was just something that's worth our doing is just stepping back again now that we have the survey data, the ACS data. To think back, all right, what else? I mean, I think there's probably some more useful data that we can pull from the database that we already received. So I just can go back and look at that again. I'd forgotten that.
Yeah, I can send you that big spreadsheet again. I mean, I started to kind of, it's just VLOOKUP files, like to map, and then I did it by age, and I did it like senior, middle age, young. I think we did it by age group, and I mapped like that category into the assessed values of each, like, and said that someone on Monument Street, like, you can see that they're senior, middle, low, and age. I mean, there's a lot you can do with it. I can send you that where I
Great.
started. I mean, I never finished anything because I think
Yeah.
we decided at that time we didn't know anything about them, and
Yeah.
Alan's correct. Like, we can see that someone lives at this unit, but again, it's an assumption. Like, people who live on Concord Green, we don't know that they own that or rent that. Like, we don't have any
Yeah.
data beyond that.
Okay.
It probably is only useful for the apartment complexes in terms of, we can get this data elsewhere. How many units are there at Prescott? How many units are there at Wedgewood Commons? So on to try to
I
add
think
up
the
and
housing
build a
production plan
yeah.
has an annex
Yeah.
that shows.
Yeah, but it's like if you can get it per, I'm trying to align it to the assessment and then actually could say Prescott, here's the number of units, here's their assessment. Now you can begin to talk about what the RTE tax impact would be.
Well, what we really need, yes, and we need to understand we need to get that broken down, renter or not, right? That, because the data on its own of, assessed value and so on within Concord Green or number of units within Concord Green is interesting, but to really have a drive analysis, we need to know, are they renters or not? Because-
Yes, the condos would be hard and it's just, I'm talking about apartment complexes.
And apartment
Where
complexes.
we know it's rentals.
So I think we're at
Okay, yeah.
Yeah,
a
okay.
really critical point in our work program over the year, right? We're at basically at the end of December. This is our last December
Yep.
meeting. We need to start analyzing, inferring findings from the analysis and writing a report. And I wonder, I mean, I started playing with the spreadsheet that Kristen made available to all of us with the 880 records now in an Excel sheet, and I quickly realized that aside from sorting by column, my Excel skills are no longer that fabulous. So like how do we take a first crack
So
at,
I, yeah, I
Yeah.
can, you
Tables.
can, once we get it, what I could do is put it using what's called a pivot table, which is a super easy way to pull out analysis, so you don't have to like play with sorting columns. But it's also, I think, what you're saying in a broader sense, is to go back and ask the questions. To really clarify what questions we've got and to figure out how, what data can inform that.
Mhm.
Cause I don't wanna like go into analysis paralysis and figure out how many things I can find out about.
This is-
the
But I mean,
survey.
each of the questions we asked is an interesting set of information, right?
True.
Yeah.
How financially burdened do you feel,
Yeah.
or how likely are you to leave Concord? I mean, we asked really interesting questions. And so just getting breakout tables would be the first thing I would do, and then start 2x2s to figure out.
So that's
One thing we
pretty,
need to do is make sure we have one person who's owning the database, so versus us all doing it.
Yeah.
yeah.
So
But
we can,
I-
you and I and Kathy can figure out who that's gonna be afterwards.
Yeah, so I think the three, again, we don't can't have three, because it's
No.
a subcommittee. But one person can own the database
Yeah,
and other people can be assigned, you know, I don't know, look, taking the database and be starting to append other data to answer key questions.
I mean, I think we should all play with the Excel sheet
Yeah,
to
I
the
can-
extent.
there
'cause-
needs to be one master data.
Yes.
One model,
So-
that versus people playing with other models and the version
By
control. being
pointing, what I
better.
mean is, exploring potential hypotheses.
Exactly.
Play with the data enough so that we can come to the next meeting and put together a list of questions that we would like to
Mhm.
Yeah.
answer, for instance.
Yeah, so I can certainly take, once we close the database, the survey end of the year, put it into a form and make a pivot table. And maybe just explain simply to people how you use that, and everyone can play with it as kind of a first get to know your survey data.
I mean, for instance, I found it really interesting that 41% were under the age of 60 and 59% over the age of 60.
Right.
That's a much bigger spread than I was anticipating. For some reason, I thought only us old folks were gonna answer the survey. But there's lots of interesting
There's some
information.
really great information in
Yeah.
there, I mean, just in terms of, cost burden, and what I might actually, John, and I can talk to you about is creating a calculated, value on, an average for income. And figure out the percent of your income that is rent.
So that's gonna be,
That's
That's the
calculated
cost
value.
constraint part.
but that's gonna be tricky, right? Because we asked income
No,
in,
but yeah,
in ranges. So do you take the midpoint of
John and
that?
I.
We have to be
can put in that.
consistent, we'll work through it.
Yeah.
So that's a, you know, so then anyway, the database could include the actual survey results. John and I can talk about if there's needs to be what's called calculated values in there. And the percentage of your income that's your housing cost or rent.
I mean, that's what we wanna get to.
That is something that, you know, again, we don't have enough, a lot of rental, but also other things, just think through and see if there's something, so people really can, they don't have to find create their own kind of way to analyze it, just take.
We're gonna have, we have a starting point for housing cost constraint for both groups, 50% and 26, right? From the housing production plan, we gotta add to that. So we were going in with some knowledge, the survey is gonna add to that knowledge, right?
The
So,
question is the mechanics of calculating it.
yeah,
You know, some of the data needs to be cleaned, some
Yeah.
of the data is in text form, not numeric form.
Yep.
Oh,
You get
yeah.
some work to do just to.
One of the things I hate to ask, but people, please think about it, we do need somebody who's willing to go through the open-ended. And
Right.
there, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 of them, and again, times 800, figure out some way to scan it, and I don't really know, I tried using what's called word cloud, doesn't
Yeah.
work.
Huh.
So I'm not quite sure what to do.
There's probably some kind of coding.
I'm
that
sure
needs to
there
be
is
done.
some coding coming part of the way.
ChatGPT.
AI tool is being, yeah, exactly, ChatGPT, AI of some sort, yeah.
Okay,
Let's just,
okay.
Yeah, Shannon might know how to do that.
She might.
Okay,
there are a lot of tools, yeah.
But is it fair to say that when we come back in January, whenever that is, and we need to talk about the schedule, because it's probably not gonna be New Year's Day, which would be our next meeting. We should have someone facilitate a discussion about how do we tease out findings from all of this?
Yeah, I think so. I'm happy. I think, why don't you and I chat about that, Ellen?
So it's just if we can have,
Have something prepared in advance of the next
Yeah.
meeting. I do think at the end of the day, it comes down to your effectiveness, efficiency
Mhm.
measure.
So Rich's comment that he's made now several times, which is the amount of transfer, amount of benefit going to different tranches to the lower end of the
Mhm.
break even, you know.
totally.
Well, I
That-
think the
that-
effectiveness
yeah.
versus efficiencies is a dollar figure. That's looking at those that we're trying to target, i.e. housing cost constrained versus non-housing cost constrained. How many of the people that are housing cost constrained and to what extent dollar wise? Are we benefiting them? How many are being hurt? And how much dollar wise? And then flip from
So
non-housing cost
maybe it's,
constrained.
maybe the next meeting is too early. We need to look at what the survey is telling us first.
Yeah,
But I would think by the end of January,
yeah,
we have to have a sense of how we feel.
definitely.
I think we're able to do that. I think we've got probably
Definitely.
too much data, it's kind of my impression. In that, for what you were talking about, the housing production plan, it's that sense of what percentage of overall folks in Concord versus renters are housing cost constrained, that we have to work through the survey to try to figure out if we can confirm that,
Or add to it. Yeah, exactly. Add to it. Yep, agreed.
Okay.
I'm
All right.
also thinking, given the schedule, that maybe we ought to, for those of us who are writing pieces that are independent of the central analysis, like the piece you're writing on the alternatives. I'm gonna write one on other towns. Abby's writing one on the real estate market. We ought to set ourselves a deadline for having drafts so that cause we're gonna be playing with this database right down to the end. I can see that. But in the meantime, we could comment on each other's drafts of the other sections and get those.
So that's a very good point. So. in
So I
January-
would suggest, certainly by no later than the second meeting in January, we should all have our drafts ready to circulate to the other members.
I know Shannon is writing something on the
Yeah.
qualitative
Yeah.
work, right?
Right,
I forget what the draft of outline was that I had put together, but I think each of us was gonna have a different section. So,
well, the ones I remember are the qualitative, which is
Mhm.
the alternative,
the legal review.
legal alternatives.
Yeah.
Which is you, findings from other towns, which is me. And Abby writing a piece on both the national real estate trends and trends in Concord.
And I think there's one on, and which we can work on, the quantitative impact of the
Yeah.
RTE.
Yeah.
What have we found in terms of how the RTE is
Clearly.
actually impacting people?
Clearly.
And so that is, I think central to it, and then I think that will be, we can lay out kind of an
We can lay
outline
out.
of what it's gonna say and then fill in the ad lib it,
Yeah,
basically.
yeah, I know. I think that's right, because we're gonna, then it's gonna be by ages, by, all kinds of things. And I think maybe there's a part of that in terms of writing up, the survey mechanics, just, clearly we're gonna have to put a copy of the survey in the report. And then there probably should be a section, that just simply is simple tables that show the results.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just simply, and that's
I mean, that's gonna be the largest section of the report. I would
yeah, and
imagine.
that's a super simple thing, just a wham, set it up, but then you dive down and say, okay, what does it mean in terms of effectiveness, efficiency? What does it mean in terms of who's paying more, who's paying less? And I think one interesting analysis might be to look at also not just look at maybe three ranges of value, one less than $1 million to the break even and greater than the break even. Because I think that the real question is $1 million to the break even, how many people there are not housing cost constraints and getting a benefit? That's
Note that the survey didn't use the break even as an
No.
endpoint in the
Yeah.
ranges, so it goes to 2 million.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
it goes to
Right.
3,
Yeah.
but whatever.
Well, we'll use just town distribution of assessed values to smooth that out, so we can use it,
Oh,
we
exactly.
can use data to,
Yeah. Actually, that's a great, that's perfect.
exactly. It will get it right.
Wendy, does that cover what you think the select board wants to learn about?
Yeah, no, I think, it's, the charge had a number of things and you covered them and, a lot of it's gonna be about what you ultimately find,
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
So,
all right.
Right. And there's always the, what we were talking at the beginning, communication.
Yes, I think
I
that
think
would be
there's
a-
section of communication.
use the section. And that's been a message. We did actually change the presentation of tax relief programs. We put a new page up on the select board, and then it's now a
The
page under the
assessor's
resident.
page.
Well,
is-
I know, so when you talk to the, I'm not, Meredith is very resistant to putting that table on her page, but I think.
Which table?
The 2.0.
So, no, do you know the Council on Aging has a very nice.
Oh, yeah,
summary
yeah, yeah.
That has all the programs.
Right.
That is now on the select board page and under the residents page. So.
What's the
it's not-
residence page?
If you go to the town website, there's a residence, you know,
Oh.
what you want to know page.
Oh,
So you know, newcomers would look at that page,
Oh, I
right?
see.
So that's an
Has
important.
nothing to do with the assessing
That
department.
has absolutely nothing to do with the assessment, yeah.
and
But I
Harwich.
think part of what your report is gonna do is give the incentive to revise the information on the assessor's page. That's a big one.
I've been to that page numerous
It's
times.
been-
It's awful.
I have tried a
Yeah.
couple times to get that.
So Harwich has a really interesting
I know they do.
two-page flyer.
Yeah. Right.
Listing all of the different relief programs, makes it very easy to find. I've started drafting a mock-up of what
Yeah,
we might
great.
do
Put
in
it on
Concord, and yeah,
Put it in for
just
it.
as an example.
Yeah, no, I think we have a lot of new leadership to come over, see and get some things done.
Yeah, yeah.
There's one other, sort of separate section, almost a big text box that somebody ought to do, and I think that's summarizing the Lexington report. Because everybody
Oh,
knows,
okay.
hey, Lexington,
But just put that in the information from other towns.
you wanna
Yeah.
put it in there?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, that's what I
Okay,
would.
yeah,
In-
we'll do that.
In the real estate section, do you want me, because I can do Concord trends, national trends, but are there other communities we wanna compare and contrast about in either Middlesex County or Lexington or Harwich? I mean, are there other data points that we'll want for the real estate trends besides just Concord?
It's hard for me to wrap my head around what trends are gonna focus on. Demand broken out by segment.
Number of sales, number of listings, number of sales, I mean, it's hard to get a, age of buyer, but the
Right.
trends of, I was talking about this last time, there is a national trend of the average age of the home buyer is going up. So I can pull some of
Oh,
that data
right,
from
right.
other places, but I'm just talking about
Yes,
stats. If we have statistics on Concord, are there other towns we want just some raw statistics on?
is there in that?
As, so that it relates when we're saying, because when we pull a Lexington report, Lexington doesn't sell the same way Concord does. There's, different number of units, there's different type of buyer, so it just might be helpful to have a baseline.
Do you have towns that you typically use as analogs within the real estate, like Realtor Group? Is it like, all right, when we think about Concord, it's Concord, Sudbury, Wellesley.
Absolutely. I mean, there's sort of, the 8 surrounding towns, and then there's the comparatives. If I were to do comparatives for someone, it might relate more to, if we're in the 2-acre zoning, we might relate more to Carlisle and Lincoln
Yeah.
because that's all 2-acre zoned. So
Yeah.
if someone's looking at, but I'm thinking more of if I am pointing out, real estate trends in Concord
Yeah.
and then national,
Yeah.
there's a lot of different differences in our different communities.
Yeah,
And then we're gonna be talking about reports of other communities.
Yeah.
I'm trying to make sure we just have enough.
I guess what I'm recommending is, I agree, good to have macro national, good to have Concord. To your point, we need something in between it, and the in between it to me would be the 7 or 8 towns that you typically
Yeah,
look at
that's what I
around
would.
here.
That would be
Because
good.
that's gonna show, because national to Concord's gonna be interesting, but those, you'll see any material
Yeah,
differences.
Right.
Particularly over time, the data over time is gonna be important year by year, and as you say, highlight by assessed value. We're at best gonna be able to kind of get a blurry image of things, just
Right.
given the limited data set, but it'll be interesting to
I
see.
mean, one of the comments you were making, and I thought that really would be important to emphasize is that the age of the first time buyer is going up. Because I think that is one of the, it's kind of quasi conclusion observation.
Well, those
Otherwise-
people need to live somewhere, so then they're renting.
Yes, so they're renting to
So
try
then
to
you need
build.
more rentals,
Yeah.
so there's, number of units, we've had a supply and demand issue nationally, but also in all of our towns, with not enough supply for housing that's affordable. And then it pushes people into rentals, but rentals have also been expensive, so.
Abby, I think there's one thing I've heard from some of the public that maybe you could do, which would just be, if you can, to take the comparable towns, the ones that you revealed and say are comparable, and just show probably by valuation block, the change over time over the last 3 or 4 years in the percentage of houses being sold.
Okay,
In other words, is this driving people, rich people to sell? And if it's the millionaire's tax that's driving rich people to sell, then all those towns should show that.
Mhm.
If it's
Oh,
here, then
yeah.
right.
Mhm.
maybe
Exactly.
this has got something to do with it.
So having there be different brackets of, range.
Yeah.
Sale
Yeah.
price and.
I mean,
and Number of
Not
units.
really
Yeah.
grainy, but, less than 750,
Yeah.
1.5 million, and so on.
And beyond, yeah.
Yeah, if you could do that, I think that would be.
That's very
helpful.
doable, yeah.
Yeah, because our
There's-
survey talks about housing costs, but it doesn't really talk about taxes overall in Massachusetts, and you do hear that.
Right,
it's
well,
all
that's
like
why I brought up,
Somebody's
you know,
moving
the-
out. because it
Exactly,
doesn't
state
really
and
affect-
national trends
Yeah,
matter.
right,
because We
yeah.
don't wanna be,
Okay,
we benchmarking ourselves against.
We know people are leaving, but the articles I've read aren't clear whether it's people leaving at the top end or whether it's young people who can't find a house they can buy. The docs are trained here and would like to stay here, but can't buy a house.
There's another cross-town data analysis that would be interesting, and I don't think it's a trend issue. It maybe is more something for your section, Rich, but what constantly strikes me in Concord is that we have this distribution of home values that skews to the high end, that brings our break-even point up so high. And that's not the case in different towns. And I wonder how we get that information, maybe from a housing production plan report?
So is it
The
like,
distribution of home values.
The question
Brookline
being,
versus.
if you were to
Sudbury.
plot the distribution, is there, a more substantial high-end sale
yeah,
in Concord than there is in Lexington?
Right, because part of the argument about Brookline was that there's so many condos, and so they have a heavy weight in below break-even point properties. They're more evenly balanced.
Mhm.
And part of the
Mhm.
argument in Marlboro was it was
Yeah,
pretty
it's
flat.
value.
And the people who were above the break even didn't feel they were substantially different than the people below the break even. So like, how could we show that?
Mhm.
Does that
That's a-
help
yeah.
make an
Yeah.
argument?
It'd be
Would-
really, the 89% number that
Yeah.
Meredith, they would be. So I think it's another way, it'd be curious to see what that number is for
Yeah.
those towns,
Yeah.
right? Because I think it's that those
Percentage.
very high value houses that are making that 89%
Yeah.
so high.
Yeah,
If it were a lot lower,
yes.
then you wouldn't be subsidizing such a broad group of Concordians.
Benefiting. We don't subsidize.
Benefiting.
Benefiting. Providing relief for.
Exactly, that's my point.
All right. Okay, in the interest of time, I think maybe we move on to, so when is our next meeting then?
Well, that's what I was gonna say
Yeah,
before we
next
go to
meeting.
public comments.
Yeah,
The next meeting would be on January 1st. That's obviously not ideal. Um,
Yeah.
and I guess also, as we now start to get into the nitty gritty, do we need to meet weekly? Like maybe we start on January 8th and we meet every week in January and see where we are after that.
I'm willing to do that. Anybody,
I won't.
object?
I can do it, but I think we're talking to the people who've got the most free time.
Yeah, I don't think I'm gonna be able to make weekly, sorry. This January's my biggest busy
Oh,
year end. I gotta close the year,
Right.
but I mean, I'll do my best, but I definitely wouldn't make weekly.
Maybe what we do is we can
You can
have
schedule it and I can-
bi-weeklies and then
So you can,
two people, not subcommittees, two people groups can get together and work on things.
so we would have the 8th and
You and I are
the
gonna be weekly.
22nd. I know, we're gonna be big friends. 8th and the 22nd, but I agree that there should be, commitments by people, and maybe this is a topic for the 8th for sure, of like providing to the group solid updates of.
Well, and if we're gonna have to review drafts of reports
Yeah.
in committee, I think we're just gonna need more meeting time. So for now, what I hear people saying is let's schedule on the 8th and the 22nd.
And the 8th would be the evening and the 22nd would be the morning.
Is
So
there-
Shannon's already set this out.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. All right, so Wendy, select board liaison.
You're doing great work. Keep it up. You know what? I'll just comment. You guys are doing an incredible amount of work. You're doing a really great job digging into the details and really asking the tough questions. So really, we're doing it.
I don't think that many people, I think people really care about the topic, but also there's a, I mean, I'll just say personally, there's a real commitment on this task force to be sure that we're complete in our analysis. And I think it's the best kind of analysis where you really try to present pro and con, the whole picture. And
Could
then,
I just suggest that we make the 22nd the target for our individual
Okay.
pieces? Not that we review them all in one meeting, but that at least we have them and we can read them and then.
And their first drafts and, you
Yeah,
know, we
the
can
first draft,
continue to
right.
work on them.
Yeah, right.
and maybe Shannon had or rather Kristen, I guess, oh, maybe it was Shannon, a read-only SharePoint site. Maybe that's a place to put the documents. In other words, it'd be nice to have a site that we can post documents on.
We're,
And-
the SharePoint site, yeah.
Yeah, and
I have
But
not
it's
been,
read only, so again, we're not doing group edit.
no,
via
it
that.
would be posted and then come back to a group meeting for comments.
What's the difference between just circulating as part of a meeting packet versus
Um,
posting on the SharePoint?
I guess we could do that. It's just like not having emails with zillions of attachments. Okay, we can do it as email for simplicity and I will see if there's a better way to do it in terms of sharing drafts.
Mhm.
It's really a version control. That's where it becomes beneficial, but
Yeah.
either way, right now, it doesn't matter.
Okay,
I guess I would suggest that in the early stage, we each write our section, present to the group for comments, go back and revise.
Mhm.
And then at some point, God willing, I will volunteer to aggregate, to compile everything into one document.
okay.
And we'll see how that looks.
Alright.
Does that make sense?
Mhm.
it does.
All right.
But so the 22nd is the time, everybody who's committed to one section, and I'm gonna take a sort of first pass on doing the survey, just has a draft.
Yeah.
And at this point, we'll email it, like, just send your draft to Lynn and I.
Yeah.
And then we'll compile them into
Okay.
one and decide if there needs to be a repository that's, helps with version control.
Yeah, and hopefully maybe John could have the ACS Puma.
That would be
No.
so good.
What I want to do by the 22nd is try to use the various data sets that we have to get to the efficacy efficiency ratio.
Perfect, okay.
So that's, I want, my two focuses are efficacy efficiency as well as peeling apart the 2.9 million.
Yes. And
'Cause I think
hopefully the
that's-
assessor will have a lot of those answers for us,
The 2.9 million, we should be able to build a bottom up.
and that would be great. Okay, I think we're down to do we have any comments from the public?
Ellen, if I could may,
Please.
Carolyn Reed, 83 Woods End, member of the Finance Committee. You are assembling several fascinating databases. Please keep in mind that any database that you create or work could be subject to a FOIA request. So make sure the data is publicly available. And if the assessor expresses concern about third-party use of the databases of information, think twice about it. That's my suggestion. That's it.
What do you mean think twice? Well, so the assessor's database, the database that information we're getting is already on their website. In some form, we're actually asking for an easier, for instance, for the property cards, an easier way to interpret it.
As long as it's public information, you can use it.
Yeah, the
But
survey- I
otherwise,
guess
just
what you're saying is this is a survey. When we get the results and put it in an Excel spreadsheet, whatever, add to it, that needs to be a publicly available.
Once
Data
it's
set?
cleaned,
Once it's cleaned, yes.
yeah, I
Yeah.
would be
Yeah.
leery.
That
of
sounds
just-
good.
Okay.
And we won't close that until the 31st.
Yes, I will work with
Yeah.
Kristen to be sure that there's a email, news and notice, and also we don't close it till the end of the year.
Great. Okay,
Okay, if no other comments from the public, do I have a motion to adjourn?
move to adjourn.
Second. Third, fourth.
All in favor? Adjourned. They're adjourned at 9:50.